Check. Is that a good? Is that a good volume for the music? Hello. 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 It's a good echo. I just did this podcast. I was just a guest on the Anime Sickos podcast. One of my favorites. Loved it. And I was using my little soundboard for the whole time. And it didn't occur to me a single time to use the echo for dramatic effect. And this is a major disappointment for me. Okay, so that was a big video essay with the vast majority of everything that I would like to say about working on one big fantasy webcomic for 12 years. Not everything. It's been a long time and there's a lot of things that show up. But that was what that was. And I'm going to put it on YouTube. And it would be great if people saw it. More people saw it. You know, thank y'all for being here. A bunch of questions came up in the chat as it was going through. I answered a lot of them, but some of them it felt appropriate to talk through in a designated portion. But I don't remember what they were. So if you could ask them again, that would be great. I appreciate your interest in what I'm doing. Let me change this. Q&A. Maybe I'll put something else in the background here. Oh, this is kind of a big file, but maybe it will work. This is the entire raw footage of drawing and coloring that page from the video. The whole thing is 2 hours and 11 minutes long, which is not terribly long. I don't imagine we'll get through the whole thing. What is the YouTube channel called? It's just my name, Evan Dom, on YouTube. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll yell about it there. You mentioned genre fiction, saying that it nails down and literalizes poetic devices. Is that a definition you use? Do you consider your work genre fiction? I think that is a definition I use. I'm sure that I got that from somewhere. Oh, there's a great book I read. What is it called? Nope, don't remember what it's called. But I think that's kind of a conventional understanding of it. Like a key example to me being like, if a ghost is in a story that's like a literary story or a more traditional story, the ghost is often a way of talking about a character's memory or regrets or some more loose thematic dimension of the story. But if a ghost is in a ghost story, that is a genre story, then on some level the ghost is a ghost and it works a certain way and it's actually there and there's rules that it abides by or whatever. And then like there's the video gamey application of that is like genre in the extreme, kind of like how many hit points does the ghost have is kind of the ultimate extent of that train of thought, maybe. Do I consider my work genre fiction? Yeah, absolutely. I'm at odds with, in a lot of ways, some stuff in secondary world fiction, but that's firmly the tradition that I'm in. I wouldn't be doing, it would not be conceivable for me to be doing the sort of thing that I'm doing were it not for the legacy of Lord of the Rings, basically. Not even Lord of the Rings itself, but how Lord of the Rings has been has been reinterpreted and misunderstood by generations of nerds. I remember one question about the motivation for selecting a 180% scale that you stick to now that you stick to for continuity purpose. Yes, I remember that question. I didn't pick 180%. I picked 10 by 15 inches because it had to be a some 2x by 3x, and I had done Rice Boy and Order of Tales both at 8 by 12, and I wanted to do something bigger that could allow for a little more tightness, and it has done that, and it is pretty easy to draw because it's so big, and that means there's like room for there's a little bit of margin for error. But when I've drawn stuff at a smaller size since then, it just kind of makes more sense in a lot of ways. I don't have to buy paper that's as big. It's I have to be a little more careful about how I'm drawing, but I can draw pretty tight and quick. So probably going to err on a slightly smaller size now. 10 by 15 feels huge. And then I just end up with like hundreds of pounds of paper. Bangelope didn't have a specific question, but during the break we were thinking about the social media side of things, how it aggressively constrains stories in form and how they're shared. Wondering how you think it could go in the future and ways to interact with that beast in your post-Vattu work. Yeah, that's fertile territory. I don't really know. I mean, I guess I see artists doing comics that are tailored to fit into the way social media works. And I don't really pay close attention to it. I don't understand it. I don't think I could ever do it myself. The angle of high relatability and low specificity art. Well, that's really sounds like I'm disparaging people, and I don't disparaging artists, and I don't mean to do that. But the platforms push you if you're trying to like establish yourself doing or saying anything. The platforms push you towards reaching as many people as possible and saying things that apply to as many people as possible and aren't specific. I can't fucking do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how it aggressively shapes and constrains stories in form. It's interesting seeing, I'm on Webtoon recently. I'm re-serializing Vattu on Webtoon, which is not a social medium, but it's kind of feels like it's affected by the same pressures. And it's interesting seeing how comics work there, because the sort of the ways that comics are induced to exist on that platform, you have to draw them very quickly, which means there's a lot of recycled material and there's a lot of like, SketchUp models for backgrounds and stuff like that. And there's a lot of just tight close-ups and you move through them really quickly and it's very dialogue heavy and like rhythmic, And I'm putting this comic that is drawn like an old-fashioned comic there, and all these people commenting on it. It's incredible to be on that platform and to have all these people finding it who have never seen it before and seem to, no offense to them, not have a tremendous amount of context for the tradition it's working in. And I assume they're all significantly younger than me. But it's funny how blown away they are by the fact that it's all drawn, and that that sounds, you know what I mean? I don't know. And then one other thing, you were wondering how you think it could go in the future and ways to interact with that beast in your post-Vattu work. I can't fucking interact with that beast, man. I don't know what to tell you. Jesus Christ. Hopefully I don't have to, I'm thinking really hard about formulating my approach to the next big self-published thing, because that is the direction that I desperately want to go in a big focused way. And everything that I have that has made my work function for anybody is that I have done the thing that I believe in, that I know is not going to be for everybody, and I just have to keep doing that, and I have to believe that there's a way to keep doing that, and that the audience that I have, that I think largely was built outside of the space of social media, or the space of the sort of modern, extremely weaponized social media. I have to believe that audience and that sort of potential energy is still there. Lost my train of thought in that sentence, but something like that. Oof. Okay. May we all be able to avoid that beast. Okay, I'm trying to keep up here. I spent too long. Forget the Lord of the Rings Mount Fuji quote: "All fantasy either has it in the background, or if it's not in the background, it's conspicuous by its absence." Yeah, I feel that. I think I remember you're driving towards a tighter art style when making Vattu. I think so. I wanted it to be technically better drawing than Order of Tales. So I was taking it more seriously. A lot of it too, I started with a particular drawing style that just grew out of drawing at a larger original page size, that was pretty dense. And it's, I think, strikingly less dense now. And that transition, I think, was largely about seeing the book in print, like seeing the first Vattu book in print in, like, I don't know, 2012 or 2013. It's so small. It's the size I want it to be, but it's so much smaller than 10 by 15, and it really gives you perspective on how much detail is just wasted. Not wasted, but how much detail is kind of like counterproductive to the clarity of the image, and also moving quickly through it. Because comics are like, you just have to be totally mercenary about making everything fucking efficient. Feels like a silly question, or maybe something that will be addressed more, but what does Sate want or use on Wait For other than getting high and pigment? Is it power just in that it is addictive and later more inventive use in the comic, or is it something else it's used for? I guess that's a voice of God question, so I don't know. But the only thing in the comic is it's used as an addictive drug, which I imagine is like a somewhat like a suggestively psychedelic stimulant. Has doing Ambiguity Program had an influence on your work, bringing in new influences, etc.? Yes. Ambiguity Program is kind of a reconnection with a lot of interest in esoteric old animation that I had years and years ago that clearly and specifically went into Rice Boy. And reconnecting with that stuff in a very focused and long-term way is just very, I don't know, it's hugely energizing to just be aware of all the different ways that things can look, and all the different sort of parallel pop cultural realities that we have abandoned or ignore or whatever. And it puts into perspective for me this idea that, like, we really think we figured it out. We've solved pop culture. We've decided what the appropriate way for things to look like is, and we haven't at all. So it's just generally helpful for that. This book, Mansion X, that I'm doing for Iron Circus, and that'll be out in 2023, I think, is really specifically grows out of a couple of different aesthetic focal points that I only would have focused on because of Ambiguity Program. I know you have a real love for surrealism. Have you considered diving back into the surreal in your upcoming work? Depends what you mean surrealism. Um, it's it shows up in different ways in different things. I think that Mansion X has a more sort of clearly or understandably surrealist texture, and and a more like poetic and or magical realist narrative logic to it. But the stuff that I'm drawn to, that doesn't feel like sustainable in like a big picture way to me. And the stuff that I'm mostly drawn to is bigger than that. And I guess the Island Book series too. I feel like that's kind of got that fable kind of poetic texture. I don't know. I don't nail this down too clearly in my head. The stuff that I'm drawn to, like the big overcommitment stuff, the stuff that occupies as much of my life and brain as Vattu has, is more literalistic in its treatment than that. What I like is a surrealistic approach to the visual raw material, but a kind of grounded and literalistic approach to how the story is told. Why are the three leads in Vattu all children? I don't know that I had thought of it as there being three leads. I think Vilas feels like, I think, to me, one of the top tier, most significant characters, and he's some sort of young adult. But Vattu's a child because that's the structure of the thing. And I think children, it's a clean, interesting way to talk about growing up and figuring out the world, I think. I don't know if I have much of an answer for that. I feel like Goblin Week was your first social thing. Any thoughts on the success or reach of that? I love it personally. I love it too. It's now a thing that people don't even know I started. So I don't know how much that gets me, but it's awesome. I love seeing a bunch of people draw goblins, and I love having a little event thing, I guess. I'm not much of a, I don't really work with people, and I don't often I don't often do a lot of like big loud things that involve other people. So it's fun to have like one thing like that, but I don't know. I think it's been successful as just a fun thing that people do, but I don't know how anything like that could be successful in a career way. Really? I don't know. What billionaire do we have to kidnap to get the 100%? You don't want to see it that big. It's designed to be 6 by 9 inches, Surrealism is the provocative, the ineffable, sort of weird fiction-y. I like aspects of that, but that's not where like my storytelling aesthetic is really. I love seeing that done well. But I like the tension between, look at my fucking sleeve here. I cut this out of the final video. I like the tension between like magical or surrealist elements in like an understandable, like a very intelligible world feeling and story structure. How do you decide on doing work in color or inks? I'm a big fan of how Harrowing looks. Harrowing of Hell is a weird example because I had the whole scheme for that thing very clear in my head. Like the whole look of it and the whole central sort of punchline of it being like a Christian anarchist story about the most imperialist bit of Jesus fan fiction, but the idea of it being like black and white and red, it just felt obvious and perfect to me. I don't know if I try to have how it will look very clear in my head as early as possible, and then build that into the whole structure so that it feels like it could be no other way, basically. To put it abstractly. Velaz. I don't say these names very often. A pronunciation guide. The thing is, when people say Vattu instead of Vattu, they're not wrong because it's made up, you know? And all the names are pretty deliberately orthographically simple. So I'm comfortable with, I don't know. So I've been playing a lot of JRPGs lately, and it's crazy that something like Final Fantasy IX, there was probably, I guess, millions of people have played that game, and nobody can agree on how to pronounce the fucking main characters' names of it. And that's beautiful to me. Zidane? Zidane? I think it's Zidane. And I think that the little summoner girl is Eiko, not Aiko. Eiko. As if it's Japanese. Eiko, right? Come on. Did I miss anything? I think that might be all of the questions. Zidane. Spokane. Zidane makes sense to me. I don't feel as incensed about that as I do the Eiko divide. Do you have a peer group or community of fellow artists to support each other and bounce ideas off of? I'm interested in how much someone can do something alone versus with a larger supporting community. I'm friendly and occasionally pretty well connected to a lot of people. Jidan. Okay, that answers that. I'm occasionally pretty well connected to a lot of other people that I sort of grew up with in independent comics. But for years and years now, I haven't really been going to other people for input on what I'm doing creatively. I have one friend who's who thinks nothing like me. Who thinks in a very detailed way that is kind of nothing like me, but that we bounce off of each other in an interesting way. And I've gotten a lot out of talking with him about like big narrative ideas. The people very close to me, I will like show them a thing I did because I'm excited about it. And I want them to see it, but I don't really have... I feel like I don't have a lot of community around me that's densely involved in my work. I feel very close to a lot of people in comics, closer when comic conventions were regularly happening, but that was never really a thing of like, let's talk about what we're doing in granular detail. I don't know. I'm kind of lately figuring out how much I can operate as an alone person. I'm living alone lately, and in a way that would have made me very uncomfortable several years ago, but really doesn't now. Do you have an art class you consider the most impactful in the way you design your characters, or are you mostly self-taught? I have a degree in Spanish, and I had a minor in studio art at Appalachian State University in North Carolina. So I took a lot of classes with a sort of fine art bent, which I was fully uninterested in. That bent, I mean. And I got an enormous amount out of like learning a lot of technical drawing skills, and I got the most out of just the drawing classes. Like there is such a thing as classical drawing skill, you know. There's construction in drawing. There's a lot of stuff like that I would not know how to do at all if not for those classes. I love that. And then I took some painting classes, but that was all. The sort of institutional tenor there was very aimed at the fine art world, not interested in illustration, and totally mystified by comics. So anything that was more, illustrative or cartoony, I just figured out on my own. Is there a particular reason behind designing the fluters not to have visible mouths? With all of this stuff, I'm generally just driven by like all the visual development, like character visual development stuff. I'm mostly driven by like a sense of what looks right. Often it's like trying to get down an image that feels clear in my head, but I can't quite get clear on paper. Stuff like no visible mouths or like, missing facial features. I think there's it has an effect of like making it unfamiliar in a way that can seem open-ended or inviting, that I like a lot. It's a little clunky or weird to have no mouth on this central character, but it is what it is, and I like how it makes her look. I don't know. There's something. It does something with the cartooning. It's like how Hello Kitty works. Like it's a little bit alien, but there's this like room for. It opens up this room for investment, not because you're imagining what her mouth is like or whatever, or what she would look like if she was a person, but just there's like an openness. There's an irresoluteness to it. How would you ideally see your work being shared with others? Rice Boy is finished and a relatively quick read, but it's old. It's old, but it's out there, and it has a particular voice that I feel like people can still get something out of, and that still connects to the look of or the vibe of my other stuff. So I'm obviously comfortable with people reading it. I don't know. The ideal thing, I just want people to latch on to whatever part of it is interesting, I guess. If it were me and I was coming to it, I would just plug into some random middle page of Vattu and plow through a chunk of it and see if it made me want to read the rest of it, I guess. Any tips for people who want to dive more into creativity, settings, schedules, etc.? I don't really know. This is my job, so I'm not balancing it with a real job in the world. So I don't know. I think that there's maybe always an element of sort of being irresponsible or working too much or being a little too obsessed with something. I don't know. I'm not qualified to answer that one, I don't think. I often feel like my thoughts and ideas get lodged inside me and have troubles getting them out. Sometimes even they feel like they die on the vine, so to speak. Is that something that happens to you? Do you have any advice? I don't think anything dies. Okay, yes, I do actually have advice. I have a lot of ideas, and some of them will sort of start to materialize, and I'll start to nail them down, and then just practically I can't execute on them in any real way. Or I can imagine being able to execute on them so far in the future that I might as well not think about it. But the trick for me has been to not to not get married to any of them, to not build too much structure into them that feels like it can't be loosened. Like I'll have an idea for a story and then I can do all this planning and build up this whole big structure, and then it's this perfect tight little object that has to exist exactly how it exists. And then like I won't be able to touch it for years, and then I'll forget what it even was, you know? But if I build it in such a way where it's a sort of loose collection of things that can be shifted and moved around and pushed into other things, then there's a lot more potential energy there. And then it'll show up in other projects later on that you're not even aware of, you know? Something that can feel like you fully abandoned it, and you can look back on it like regretting that you didn't execute upon the plan for it that you had years ago. You know, that's just not how it was going to exist. And if it's going to exist at all, maybe bits of it will be digested more fully into another project that is more where you're at. Because I don't think you can really plan that much. You're always where you're at, and you're always doing the thing that is talking about where you are at, you know? Imagine that was more coherent than I think it was. I don't know if this is reasonably answerable here, but how do you go about defining and writing your characters? I've never known how to go from imagining worlds and broad ideas to actually writing a story. Yeah, I don't know. That is a bit abstract. There's a way that people talk about characters as being like the most important thing, or like you have to start with characters, and I don't believe that. I often don't do that. But it is, characters are how you see everything. So maybe think about like starting points, like if you have big ideas about a setting or like a big story theme or whatever, what does that suggest in terms of people on the ground and their perspective on it, you know? If you're making a story about like, oh, I can't call to mind some example, but if you're making a story about like some big world historical significant, you know, epic fantasy event, what are the resonant points of view within that, you know? I don't know. That's as much as I can think about that one right now. Last page, Vattu opens up a huge mouth like a nutcracker. Oof. I have had the last scene of that book written. I wrote it on a specific route of walk through Prospect Park. I've had it crystal clear in my head for like 5 years. Okay. Anything else? This is very fun. This has been very fun. Here, let me show you something. Oh yeah, I'm left-handed, as you may have noticed, and so often that means because I often will try to do like animatic sort of things where the left and right, a panel one after the other, left to right, will like be very aesthetically similar. So oh shit. So what was I? So I'll often have to draw backwards, you know, because I want them to be able to compare to each other. Okay, the next book I'm going to do is going to be a self-published thing. It's probably called Third Voice. That's stylized with a numeral 3. It's about these two characters in addition to an enormous amount of other stuff. Spondule is the tall one and Navichet is the short one. I've written so much of these guys. I don't know. I have an enormous amount of like momentum and raw material here. And I did like a Patreon post today talking about this, but next year sometime, Vattu will be finished and there'll be I'll try to make a big like, publicity push around that. And then I want to make a really big deal of this next thing starting and try to just force it to work in the internet as it is now. Cause, I don't know what else to do. And I believe in it. That's all I'm going to say about that. How do you deal with loneliness as a creative? Is there a way you cope with being alone in your ideas in your head and not sharing with others until you have like a page done? Not at this point. I probably would have. I have had problems with that in the past. It was kind of weird working on the Island Book series, like drawing an entire book and having just a couple of editors to ever see any of it, really. It's not really a loneliness, but it did not feel ideal to me. But I don't know. I'm at the point where I have like an audience already, though. So it's kind of like, it's a very different question than it used to be. I know that people read the stuff and I have heard from enough of them that like they're on board. They're like, I know I'm talking to somebody. So it's a very different question than it used to be. There's still the material, there's still the raw thing that I'm mostly doing the stuff alone. But usually, often it's pretty exciting and engaging for me still. And I've always been a person who operates mostly in a kind of abstracted way. Do you like people thinking of you as a creator? It's like technically what you are, but I always find the creator-consumer dichotomy to be super limiting. I don't know. I don't really think about how people think of me in the public sphere. I have all sorts of anxieties about what people think about me that know me socially, but in my capacity as an artist on the internet, I'm not a person really. People can, within reason, I don't know. If people are interested in what I'm doing, that's great. They don't really know me. I don't know. Yeah, no, it is a super limiting dichotomy. Thank you, Polycount Budget, for being here. Do you plan on doing any game design beyond Usurper Ghoul? There's a thing that I may be working on with my brother. I don't know. It's a medium I really like, but I haven't thought terribly much about it. I mean, the medium, not the medium of video games, but the medium of making a little guy walk around in a low resolution space. That's the medium. Like a Final Fantasy VI or Link to the Past type thing. Webtoon has an interesting feature where you can add audio to chapters or releases. Will you use that with Vattu? I will not use that with Vattu, but that is cool. And I do like the idea of building more of a multimedia element into comics. Here's the thing I was thinking about. I hope you don't mind if I'm just... Well, no, you can just leave if you're not interested. Here's the thing I've been thinking about. Do you remember Homestuck? Someone please tell me. I never read it. I read a chunk of it, and then I was, I was doing when I was doing comic conventions, I was doing 8 or 10 a year, and so I was acutely aware that it was this enormous fucking thing. And there is this sort of like received thing of like, oh, these are all just obnoxious kids and they're all covered in paint and they're all kind of a little bit, like theater kid obnoxious in a way that is also kind of charming. But it was a huge fucking thing, right? And then it wasn't all of a sudden. And that makes me think that like, was that the last thing like that? That was an independent. It wasn't entirely Andrew Hussey, but it was an independent work, and it was to a fault. It was an obsessive, just unprecedented, weird, unpredictable thing. And look at how much impact it had. I don't think that's possible with the internet as it is now, but God, But that makes me think about like multimedia and I don't know. What is there now? Like what can an independent artist do that occupies that much space? Not in terms of how much space in the pop culture, but just like something that's that big in that multimedia and something. I'm thinking about that. Oh, I need to get water. I recently read more of it than I have before, though, of Homestuck, like thousands of pages. It's it's a little bit slow sometimes, but there's moments of real fucking brilliance, and I am defensive of it for that. Really, like, incredible stuff in there. Okay. I feel like I missed one. Well, how did Emerald City go? It was like successful enough. I went into it treating it like treating it in a low risk way. Normally I'm stressing out a lot about getting as much material, as much stock as possible there in advance, which is always the most stressful part. I didn't do that. I brought enough to like make a profit, and I did make a profit, and it's fine. And it was just a huge fucking relief. I really I missed all that stuff, It was great. It was great. Nice to see a bunch of comics people I hadn't seen in two years. Homestuck doesn't exist anymore because Homestuck was at least half the live community in the moment. Homestuck serialized is very different from Homestuck Archive. Absolutely, I'm getting that sense acutely now, reading it. Well, whenever a couple months ago I was reading it. That's an interesting thing. With Vattu, because I kind of established this precedent. I should have talked about this in the video. I established this precedent that like I'm going to make books and they're going to be, reasonably well designed and sturdy or whatever. That a lot of people early on were telling me that they'll just wait until it's all in print. And I knew it would take a long time. I didn't know it would take as long as it's taken. And I wasn't about to tell people that like, well, okay, you'll be waiting fucking 8 years. But I want to like, I don't know. There is something about like keeping a thing active on the internet and building a sort of sense of community around a thing that's consistently updating. This is another thing to wrap my head around. Rereading Vattu to capture. Hey, I really appreciate that, man. Damn. About reading and rereading to capture the interconnection. Was thinking about Homestuck during the part of the video essay about improvisation in long-form writing. In many ways, it probably is good to lean into improv, because regardless of whether you intend to or not, the media is responded to live. Yeah. Yeah, the dynamics are all very different for serialized stuff. I like things to be planned and to make sense and to be consistent and to prefigure their eventual developments. But I think you can still do that and also live within it, improvise within it. Homestuck made this world. I've been listening to that. I love that. Yeah. Very smart. Very smart talk. It may just be my inner hipster talking, but I've always been super disappointed when internet art or webcomic people really want to get jobs in like AAA industry. It seems limiting to me too, but how do you make a living doing this shit, you know? And over the course of the past several years, it's like it's been occasionally feasible to make a living doing independent art on the internet, and then a lot of the time not. And there is always, for a lot of people, the opportunity to transition into working for some institution that can actually pay them. That's not been, I mean, I haven't really looked for that, but that hasn't specifically been on the table for me, maybe because, I don't know, my stuff, it doesn't, I don't know. There's some invisible, slightly too weird aspect of my work, I think. I don't know. But yeah, I share that feeling that it seems limiting to me, and I desperately want everybody who wants to overcommit to their weird thing that's nothing like anything else in pop culture to fucking do that, you know? I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back. Okay. Is GGDG doing any new work online? I don't really know what she's working on. I love that comic. I shouldn't have stopped the drawing video because now it just restarts. Maybe I'll post that whole thing too. I mean, a lot of the, I think a few different bits of like raw material for this video essay have been going up on Patreon over the past couple months. That one's up there. I can make that public maybe. I think we're done here. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all being here. I think I'll just go and make that YouTube video public now. Yes, that is my Wi-Fi password on my router. Bye, folks. Oh, let me play my outro, my Ambiguity Program outro. Here we go. Goodbye.